dumb American in Buenos Aires, I think you'll be fine. Would I be a dumb American in Brazil or Colombia? You know, like you're always a bit on edge. I hate the business culture in all of Latin America. It's just terribly inefficient. It is ridiculous. Like people behave like children. They're not serious. But for other matters, you know, it's fine.
Why do you think North America, specifically the United States and Canada, succeeded so much better than Mexico and everything else in Latin America?
Same thing as why is Northern Europe wealthier than Southern Europe? It's culture. The Anglo-Saxon and Germanic culture is just vastly superior to the Southern European culture when it comes to creating wealth.
You are about to embark on a journey, not just through space and time, but through the very fabric of human perception. Imagine a world where the familiar becomes strange, and the strange becomes familiar. A place where the boundaries of reality blur, and the only limit is your imagination. This is a voyage into the heart of the unknown, where every turn reveals a new perspective, and every story challenges what you thought you knew. Welcome to Bold Perceptions, where we explore the myriad ways people see the world and discover that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures lie just beyond the horizon of our own understanding.
Back in bold and beautiful Buenos Aires and Canitas, Palermo is my neighborhood. I've been running this neighborhood the last month. Thanks to my amigo Martin for giving me his apartment. Great guy. I finally saw him last night. And I'm with the one and only, salute, hey, the wandering investor. First time we met, probably the podcast will be out beforehand. Was in Africa. And in Nairobi, had a beautiful time, fun time, and now he's back in town checking out the bull market, what we're going to talk about in Argentina, and it's great to see you again.
Yeah, man, real pleasure.
Real pleasure. I know I got you on the DJI, huh? You got this machine now? You've been rolling around in Montenegro with it, Argentina?
Yeah, so we were in Kenya, and then you showed me this little thing, this little camera. I thought it was really gimmicky. I was judging you a little bit, like, oh man, this is not serious, and then I bought one. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, they're really good.
Shout out the Chinese. I'm impressed. I've had this for almost 2 years, no issue. It's working. I think they take all the footage and they, keep it for their information. Speaking of that, there's a tweet you had about you being okay with the Chinese having your information over your own government. I kind of went after him on that in the Twitter. But what was that again? You're Mr. Sinosphere. You love the East, don't you?
No, it's just that there's a higher likelihood that my information may be misused or abused by my own government than the Chinese government that I never deal with. Sure. So, if I was a local politician, etc., that's a different matter if the Chinese wanted to blackmail me or something, but I'm not. So just as a normal private Western individual that has no links to China, I much prefer my information to be held by the Chinese government than my own government.
Makes sense. Yeah. I like to bash you on X a little bit, kind of go at you, get a little few going American versus the European type thing, and it's all fun and games. Some people take it serious. They're like, no, Lattice is actually a good guy. I'm like, dude, I met him in person. I know that. Just friendly conversation, debate. But speaking of that, what about the Europeans not having to see the table with the Russia-Ukraine war? You see that Trump is going to meet with just the Russians and leave the Euros out?
I mean, the Europeans brought it onto themselves. This is what happens when you outsource your security to someone else. Then at some point, you're not the one making the call. So this conflict was created in Europe, partially by the US, very heavily by the US. Then the Western Europeans embraced it much more than they should have. And now they seem to be running with it even harder than the Americans. So it's our own fault, I'll put it this way.
But anyways, we're out of World War III area. We're probably in the safest place in the world, Argentina, if the bomb started dropping. So far, I love it, man. I was looking for the perfect balance between Latin America and Europe, and I think I found it. Like, obviously only 1 month in, so we'll see. Time will tell. But this is a good place, man. This is really good. I obviously stayed in more of the the nicer areas, the Palermos, the Belgrano, Nunes, Porto Madero. Where's the famous one? Ricarote? The rich one? Recolete. So, but I love it. No issues with safeties. Feels just like I'm in Italy, maybe even more Italian. You know, like in Italy, I see beggars everywhere or dirty streets, and here I'm not feeling it as much. Like this is a great country.
I think Argentina makes absolute sense for North Americans. I mean, there's no reason for you to be sitting in Ohio in February if you work remotely or you have an online business, when you could just be sitting here in Argentina, same time zone or similar time zone, so super easy to get work done. And when it's snowy back home, here it's wonderful weather. It feels in many ways like Europe. I think you need to be more European to understand the nuances that it really isn't Europe. But for Americans, Canadians, it makes absolute sense. For Europeans, I would say that Argentina makes a little less sense, in the sense that it is, yes, it's European, but it's not really. I think Europeans, when they go to Latin America, they want a very Latin feel. And here is a bit of a hybrid. So Europeans prefer going to Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, because they get that real Latin vibe. And if they want work from home, or if they want to work remotely and have similar time zones, then Argentina, I mean, it's only a 4-hour difference with Western Europe, so that's okay. But South Africa is at times 0, no time difference. And it has also a very European feel, especially if you go into Cape Town. So for North Americans, I would say that Buenos Aires is an absolute no-brainer. It absolutely should be on North Americans' radar, or even just to make it a regular base. For Europeans, it's a little more nuanced.
Interesting. I want to hear about those nuances because I've lived in Italy 2 years in Bologna. I lived in Munich, Copenhagen, and the Eastern Poland. And to be honest with you, this is Southern European as it gets, in my opinion. I mean, I see some maybe cracks and Latino things with the dog barking crazy, but that's starting to happen in Southern Europe too. But the lifestyle, the people, how they look, the education, it's I think the English might even be better here than in Italy. It's pretty fascinating. So tell me exactly the nuances that makes it different from Europe, because all the Argentines say, no, we're European, we're not Latin, or they try to clap back with that.
Yeah, I think the main thing would be related to food. The food here, I find, is, apart from wine and steak and to some extent ice cream, literally only these 3, the food is vastly inferior to the quality of food that you find in Europe. If you go into restaurants, the food is just not as good. And if you go into supermarkets, the food is absolutely abysmal. I mean, coming from Europe now, I just find the food here to be really bad. The quality of ingredients is really poor. And, you know, why? I think that's the question. The country has seen 50 years of socialism ruled by an oligarchy. So it made everyone poor, and there was no competition. So gradually what the oligarchy did is cut costs, and you just end up with these products that are of very poor quality. So that's for more industrial products or anything that requires a little bit of processing, like yogurt, like cheese, all of that. But if you go in, and then if you go into fruit and vegetables, also the taste is vastly inferior to the taste of fruit and vegetables in Europe. Why? Because Argentina, though it has a lot of regulations for everything, for agriculture, it has a lot less. So everything is tolerated here, like GMOs, etc. Like a lot of the tests happen here in Argentina, along with Brazil. So you just end up with produce that just isn't as tasty as in Europe. Having said this, if you're coming from North America, the contrast isn't as big. So North Americans, when they come here, they're like, oh, the produce is okay. It's like, sure, because in America it really tastes bad. But compared to Europe, disappointment.
Okay, I can see that. You had your event the other day, and at the event there's a lot of, it seemed like Malay type supporters, libertarians, and that kind of vibe. What do you think about this whole rug pull that just happened? I mean, it's all the talk. They just walked away with a crap ton of money. He's backpedaling on every tweet. Is this big news here or what?
Yes, I just before seeing you, I met with Bowtied Mara. He's the big dude on Twitter, and he wrote a whole article that he published this morning on the rug pull. And yeah, it's pretty disturbing because it's not just his first issue promoting a scam, a crypto scam. It's his second. So sure, I guess people can make the mistake of promoting a crypto scam once, can happen, but twice, that's really bad judgment.
Yeah, it's very worrisome because obviously I think any sort of libertarian type person has kind of been like, okay, let's cheer on Argentina, Malay, and let's hope they can get it figured out, especially after like 70 years of craziness in this country with the peronism and whatnot. But yeah, it seems like some things are kind of falling apart. And then, like you were alluding to when you first got here, and same with me, the price shock, right? You talked about the Uber is double the price from the airport now. When I went to the shopping mall over here, granted it's a nice area, to get like a notebook, like 5 pens, some eggs, and maybe like 2 bottles of wine, I paid $35. I said in Europe I get that for 20 euros, at Edeka. And I was like, yeah. And so I was like, damn. But now that I've been here for a month, I've started to like, okay, I know where I am. I know what kind of products to buy. Obviously, the meat, the vino, great pricing, good stuff. But it's not as expensive. When I first came here and said, holy shit, I'm back in Munich, where I lived last year. I'm like, but they're making nowhere near the salaries that people in Munich. So kind of hit on that point right now, which you kind of felt with the cost of living. So it's a big topic for a lot of Argentines and whether they can hold the storm as these reforms happen.
Look, unraveling 50 years of socialism isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's not going to happen in 1 year. It's not going to happen in 2 years. So are the people mentally strong enough to endure the pain long enough for the reforms to start having a proper impact? That's the real question. That is the equation. And no one knows the answer.
I mean, but haven't they been through a lot of shit? I know the banking crisis. I met some locals here where their parents lost everything. Was it 2001, 2002? Their economy, what was it, the quote, there's developed countries, developing countries, Japan and Argentina. So it seems like if this is the place to handle it, it would be here. They're used to crazy shit. They're used to this way. Or was it good living in the past when you came here, or your conversations with locals?
Look, I mean, you did say you feel the people here are very Southern European and even more Italian than the Italians themselves. Well, if that's what you think, then it should also lead you to the logical conclusion that, they're not ready for that much pain. They think a bit more potentially short-term than more long-term orientated cultures, which is what brought them to this very situation they're in. So will they be able to hang in there long enough? Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. And sure, when you speak to people, sure, it's complicated, etc. But at the end of the day, though Argentina is a basket case and has been a basket case for a very long time, it's still one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America in spite of everything, right? You go to Ecuador, you go to Peru, they don't make headlines all the time for, these things that are happening here in Argentina, but they're a lot poorer and arguably they have just as many natural resources. So in spite of everything, in spite of all the chaos, in spite of all the devaluations, in spite of the circus that this country is, it is still one of the richest countries in Latin America on a per capita basis. And you walk around, it feels a lot richer. I mean, the infrastructure's there. There's just a lot more. It's a lot more developed. So, I'd say the downside in this country has been tested many times. And I guess there's a floor to how low this place can go.
Yeah, again, I'm probably in some bubbles with the people I'm hanging out with, but a lot of them are living pretty damn well, taking their trips to Disney World, Miami, nice apartments, have iPhones, have electronics, and I need to go to the other areas where, I heard things are getting really, really bad, really tough for people, but for the most part, I mean, especially in this neighborhood, dude. I go to this cafe over here almost every day. I see Argentine girls with Louis Vuitton bags, Botox, lips, jewelry on, walking around. And from what I was told, a lot of it is real estate family money. A lot of them, that's how they made their money. That's how they kept it safe for a long time. But there definitely seems to be a decent high class, even upper middle class here that is doing just fine. Like not having that big of an issue. Have you felt that?
I mean, you're giving the very definition of an oligarchy. The people you hang out with and that you're exposed to in these nice neighborhoods are members of the oligarchy. They have been here in this country for a long time. They have not been particularly productive for the economy. They just benefited from moat, from having existing businesses that were big enough and strong enough to withstand all of the regulations that crushed all the small businesses. So they are the oligarchy. They are the reason this country is in this very situation ultimately. They benefited from it. And I'm not sure deregulation is gonna help them long term.
Well, I want you to speak on that part, because that is what some are saying, Malays, sheep in wolf's clothing, right? Like if they let it all get deregulated and the big dogs with all the money make even more money or whatnot. But what is with that with Latin America and all the isolationist type economies, right? Like Brazil, the wine industry is so freaking shitty because they're protected, right? I get so mad when I go to Brazil and have to drink that wine. Obviously, we all know electronics in Latin America are crazily overpriced with the tariffs and whatnot. They don't produce them on their own. But it seems like, for sure in Brazil, where I lived for a while, now here, I mean, even Colombia, they love to do the isolationist, Mr. Trump policies now. Obviously, those countries are not on the USA level or could manufacture it themselves. But why has it been like this? Is it just back to the old days where it was resource slave extraction colonial places, and that's how business is made, through agricultural and resource extraction? But I don't understand why these economies can't just open the floodgates to China and in these different countries and make this economy flow better.
That's a very good question. So what's being done in Argentina is not full deregulation. It's only partial deregulation. And partial deregulation actually helps the oligarchy. If you were to do full deregulation, completely open up the market, they would get crushed because the Chinese would come in, the Americans would come in, the Europeans would come in, and these local companies would not be competitive at all. So this local oligarchy in all of these Latin American countries that is very close to the government, and in many cases it's their own cousins and brothers that are in government, is the very reason that Latin America is in this situation. And the way they court for votes is by promising protectionism and protecting jobs and helping the local people, essentially peddling some sort of socialism. And when you're in countries with people that are more culturally focused on community rather than individualism,
Okay.
and in countries that value fun over work, it's an easy sell. So they're
Fun does soccer, Hakuna Matata.
So the issue is one, the oligarchy, and two, the culture. So look, ultimately, Latin America will always be the second world. It'll never go up to the first world until they actually change their culture. And cultural changes don't happen overnight.
There's that one quote about Brazil, like Brazil will always be the country of the future. Like it has all the potential in the world, but it'll just go like this. And we're seeing it right now with Lula. Bolsonaro kind of had something going, now Lula's going like this, and it never freaking changes. But they still have fun. They're still in the sun. They still have beautiful women. So I think that satisfies them too. But there's never been more. I mean, it's getting bad now in Europe with the bread and games, bread and circuses with the soccer, But it's never been more prevalent I've seen than here. Like this is what people, their lives revolve around: drinking, soccer, asado. Take your vacation to Floripa, go to Tigre, go to the water. A lot of distraction, it feels like, but it does seem like they're happy. A lot of Latinos, especially in Brazil, but then again here, they have the most therapists, psychologists per capita. And I talked about this with them. I'm like, are you guys all crazy? Like, why do you need a shrink? They're like, no, like it's in our culture when we're young to go talk to someone different, have a conversation with someone and look at a different viewpoint. But there is a lot of mental illness here. So I think I was getting back to the point of, what do you think about the happiness level in Latin America, with what they're dealing with and how their lifestyle is?
I don't really know. Honestly, I don't really know, because there's outwardly happiness and there's the real happiness. And I don't think I'm ingrained enough in the culture to be able to tell you what the ingrained happiness levels are. The sheer amount of therapists here would tend to point towards relatively low levels of fundamental happiness. So I don't know. I'm not the person to talk to on this topic.
All right, the bull market. So we had a little dinner the other day with some Argentines, and you were discussing that there could be potential here to buy now, and that you're going to get paid for it in the future.
Yeah, the market crashed in 2018 in real estate, and then it just went down. In 2023, it just kind of flatlined, found a bottom, and then started going up in 2024. And now the bull market really has started. So I would expect prices to continue going up strongly if the reforms continue. So the reforms are entirely dependent. Cool. So this is talking about sheer level of happiness. They're beggars all the time here. So I would expect the bull market to continue, but it is entirely dependent on the reforms and whether they continue. If the reforms stop, or if Milei gets kicked out, I wouldn't be too bullish real estate. Right now, one of the biggest catalysts is that he did an amnesty. So essentially telling people, hey, if you have undeclared funds abroad, or actually in the country, undeclared funds of any kind, you can bring them in and we won't fine you. You'll just pay 1% or 5% or something. I think 5%, which is often the cost of money laundering, 5 to 10% in many cases. So it was worth it for people. They were able to launder their money. And a lot of it is going to end up in real estate, because right now it's sitting in banks, and people don't really trust banks. There's a history of, they have a good reason not to trust banks in Argentina. So a lot of it will end up in the real estate market. And then as well, mortgages for locals, not for foreigners, are available now in Argentina, and that's been the case since May. So gradually we're seeing that the banks are adding mortgages onto their balance sheets. So those are big catalysts. But if the reforms stop, I wouldn't invest if the reforms stop. The rental yields are extremely low. So when you buy to rent, so that's not the play here, even on Airbnb, or especially on Airbnb, I'd say. Yeah. Like apartments that cost $100,000, you rent them for $25 a night, and you'll get an occupancy rate of 50-60%. So it's not about you don't get rental yields here. So here are the plays, rather capital appreciation. Is it an easy way to make capital appreciation? No, because it comes with a lot of risk, illiquidity as well. Buying real estate I wouldn't even say it's easy here, it's complicated. It's just a lot of paperwork, but selling is complicated. It can take up to a year to sell an apartment at market price. So sure, you can invest here, buy real estate, no problem, but you would not want to overexpose yourself. You just can't allocate too much of your money into illiquid Argentine real estate. It would just be completely irrational. But for people who have a lot of money and want a little bit of exposure, sure. Or for people that anyways want to have a lifestyle base here, then again, that makes sense as well. And then they might make some capital gains in the long run as well.
Yeah, I think it would for sure be that lifestyle play and just kind of parking money. I think that would seem ideal if you're going to invest in Buenos Aires. It's great, and I love it. But if I bought something here, I'd be spending probably half the year at least, And I heard the winter gets a little yuck. The summer's been beautiful so far.
Oh. Winters here are horrible. They're really bad. I was here in May for a month. It was outright unpleasant. It is cold, humid, windy. The people look terrible, because again, one of the core issues of socialism is that people become a little poor. and poverty is more visible in winter, in the old jackets that they've been wearing for many years, etc. In summer, it's not as visible because everyone's just showing skin. But in winter, you just see it's just like people just look depressed, and heating at home is, a bit expensive because utilities have gone up so much with all the reforms, because it was subsidized before.
It was super cheap before.
Yeah, now it's not.
It's still somewhat cheap. I mean, compared to a lot of countries, but yeah, they jacked it up.
Heating in restaurants and public offices everywhere is just poor as well. So you just end up, and it's kind of polluted as well. So it's not pleasant at all in winter. Summer, amazing. Like, I'm really enjoying my time here right now. We're in February. But in May, I did not like it at all.
You made a point, and you told me that before, and I was like, damn, they let the illegal money come back in here. Say, oh, everything's Hakuna Matata, bring back your money, we want it. Just like an overall philosophy about life, because a lot of people living in developed countries can't even comprehend that necessarily, that a government would be like, hey, all the illegal stuff you did, or all the money you hid from us, you can bring it back in no issue. Like, that's just massive corruption. But that happens every day in Latin America, like in Africa too, which we discussed on the podcast, pop it up. To kind of talk to me through that, about like the real world and stuff that goes outside, the developed world of doing business with government and cartels and illegalness, that this is reality.
Yeah, before going on there, I'd just like to add, this is another gift of Milei to the oligarchy that launder money and don't declare a lot of their income, etc. That's another gift to them. It's not a gift to the poor people. Let's be clear. When you do an amnesty, a tax amnesty, it is not a gift to the poor people. It's a gift to the oligarchy. So for now, he's been mostly doing gifts for the oligarchy. Partial deregulation, but not complete. So there's still a lot of moat around their businesses, and tax amnesty, which is a gift to them. So, for all the talk of libertarianism, for now, we're not really seeing in practice many libertarian policies being implemented. If anything, there's a bit more control over things. The government has even more data than before. They're putting all these systems into place, etc. So, for now, I would not call this a libertarian experience or experiment. Just partial deregulation is all it is. Look, in terms of Latin America and corruption and all that, it's just, I don't know what to say here. It's just the way it is. Corruption is a way of life. It's deeply ingrained in the culture, and the higher up you are, the more you engage in it.
Yeah, the cliche is in the developed world, it's reserved for the top dogs behind closed doors, and the middle class, everyone doesn't see it, right? But in the developing world and whatnot, it's in your face, and you know what's going on, and you can even partake in it. You're bribing the police officer or doing this or doing that. I'm not saying to do it, but it's just fascinating to me, like, when you say that to me, like, oh, wow, so they can take all that money that is basically illegal, instead of laundering it, through the black markets and whatnot, bring it back. Hakuna Matata, everything is good now. So it's interesting as an American, especially when I grew up, we have rules of laws, and, things are in place, and we have functioning societies, and we're seeing cracks in that, obviously, with the Trump administration. He kind of brought a lot of that to light, not only with the U.S. aid, but in 2016, everyone started opening their eyes. The Tea Party before that. But yeah, it's fascinating. What about Argentina are you happy about that is going in a good direction, that since you've been here, that you've noticed?
Just the reforms. That's it. That's all that I find. Look, lifestyle was good before. It's good now. It'll be good in the future. But literally the reforms. Again, if the reforms stop, the party's over.
I'm curious about this. You've been in a lot of places in Latin America. You own property in Latin America. Why do you think North America, specifically the United States and Canada, succeeded so much better than Mexico and everything else in Latin America? I mean, because it has a lot to deal with the colonial powers and the structure system, Spain, Portuguese compared to the British, and I'm curious.
Same thing as why is Northern Europe wealthier than Southern Europe? It's culture. The Anglo-Saxon and Germanic culture is just vastly superior to the Southern European culture when it comes to creating wealth. So if you take a Latin American mostly Southern European culture combined with indigenous culture, it's just not very conducive to wealth creation. It's conducive to other things, but not wealth creation. The Anglo-Saxon mind is focused on wealth creation. The indigenous and Southern European mind is not.
Let's just take a break from the Argentina stuff. We got a lot of good content on that. The rest of Latin America, where do you see it going with the countries? A lot of people, Petro in Colombia was having some issues. Obviously Lula in Brazil. There's some issues coming around here. Do you see any up-and-comers, or your thoughts?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are buying Brazil right now because it's cheap. As long as I don't see Lula leaving, or as long as I don't see prospects of Lula or his party leaving power, personally, I'm not too inclined on investing in Brazil. Colombia is really interesting, though. Equities are cheap, amongst the cheapest in the world. And the far left guy, Petro, is probably going to be gone in 2026 in the upcoming elections. So that'll be a massive catalyst for the country. So I think Colombia would be a good play. You can buy in real estate, or you can buy ADRs on the New York Stock Exchange or the ETF. Obviously not investment advice. I think Colombia is an interesting play at this point in time. It's cheap. It pays you to hold assets. The dividends are high, and if you buy real estate and you play your cards right, the rental yields are high as well. So it's cheap, you're getting paid to wait, and there's a clear catalyst 18 months from now.
Chile, Peru, Mexico?
Mexico is a bit of a different story now with Trump up there. I'm not too sure that's very positive Mexico at all. I mean, a lot of it has been kind of priced in with a devaluation of 20%. So I'm not too sure about Mexican assets until there's clarity on a deal with Trump. Peru, I don't know enough about. Generally speaking, in terms of real estate, the market, the rental yields are low. Same thing with Chile.
Okay, let's talk about Trump. What do you think his impact will be on Latin America or any of these emerging markets you are working with? Has he thrown a bomb into your plans, what you were thinking beforehand, or were you expecting this kind of chaoticness that has been happening?
So I had a thesis that was for Nicaragua specifically, that because it was anti-American, it was receiving a lot of investment from China. China committed to building some railways, massive ports, a ton of infrastructure, to the point that Nicaragua has much higher growth than El Salvador. So to all the libertarians out there who can't stop talking about Bukele, who's far from a libertarian because he puts literally tens of thousands of people in prison without due process, that's not very libertarian. But that's not the topic here. But Nicaragua, which is supposedly run by a far left government, actually has much higher growth. And when you look at the country, the way it's being managed is they're very fiscally responsible, and there's not that much waste in government spending, much less than in the US, for example. So when you take this and then you combine billions of dollars in committed Chinese investment and extremely cheap assets because of how toxic the Nicaragua brand has become, assets were really cheap. So I've been investing in Nicaragua, but now with Trump, if he were to cut a deal with the Chinese saying, okay, we stay out of China and you stay out of Central America, that's all ours, then I would just end up with assets in a country that isn't getting support from China and it's just under US sanctions. So look, the world has become very unstable. I mean, it was. Trump just makes it in many ways even more unstable. I'm not saying it's more unstable in a bad way. I don't know yet. But what I will say is that I'm happy I'm diversified. I'm happy I'm not all in one jurisdiction, because things are just so crazy in today's world, and there's so much volatility and unpredictability that I feel the only way to remain sane is to be diversified, so that when something happens, at least you're covered.
Do you think we're going to have the multipolar world? Is that where everything is leading to? Where they take the eastern side, they have their influence, and we have the new Monroe Doctrine, and we take all the Americas? And I mean, where is the world going in your opinion, Mr. Traveler, investor? And
look, I don't know about whatever deal may or may not take place in terms of who controls what, but we're definitely headed into a multipolar world, whether we like it or not.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions off the top here. What is your favorite culture in Latin America and why?
That's a good question. I really like Mexico. Mexico is just, people are just really friendly and pretty Americanized as well. So in many ways, Mexico as a Westerner is a lot more relatable than some other countries. And Brazil, just because of how just fun it is. I think these would be my two favorite. But there's no single culture where I would say, oh, I love this culture because it's just so easy to do business here. You know, in terms of business, I just hate it. Like, I hate the business culture in all of Latin America. It's just terribly inefficient. It is ridiculous. Like, people behave like children. They're not serious. But for other matters, you know, it's fine.
Who does the best business? The people, cultures you've been around?
Anglo-Saxons, Northern Europeans, and a lot of Asians.
Food in Latin America. What country and why would you choose to eat?
I'm not a foodie.
Not a foodie? I know that. Yeah, I know that. Okay, if you were going to buy in one neighborhood in Latin America right now, whether it's the beach, whether it's in the city, what neighborhood are you buying in?
Look, I know Medellin on Twitter. For all the people watching on Twitter, he's trying to get me drunk, and then he'll ask spicy questions I'll have to decline. I hope I'll be sober enough to say no. It's always dangerous when you're recording. Look, I know on Twitter, a lot of people criticize Medellin, saying it's become basic, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Basic is good. It's going mainstream. That's what you want. You want to be investing in places that are going mainstream, because that's where the money's going to flow. Like, just today I saw a tweet, some guy saying, oh, like he was in Laureles in Medellin, and you know, there's some like Canadian chick with her parents or boomer parents, and some other Karen with a Midwest accent on like Microsoft Teams, and he was like, oh my god, it's so over. It's like, no, because like right now it's just the passport bros that have been buying real estate in Medellin. Wait till Karen starts buying real estate in Medellin.
So Medellin is the spot to buy, which you already did. Are you sure, like right now, if I went there, I should buy? I'm still early? Probably not.
I think, again, with the catalyst of the new president coming through in the next 18 months, I think your downside is limited, I'll put it this way. And in the meantime, if you buy the right type of property, you can make some good returns.
Okay. We talked about this on the Africa podcast, but we're just going to say it again. In Buenos Aires, I've felt no danger whatsoever, and I've been out not too late. You know, I'm not like a party guy. They want to go to the club at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I said, you're crazy. But I walk around with AirPods on. I walk around with bag of electronics. We get some beggars and whatnot, but I've had zero issue with safety. Right? Tell me about the safety in Buenos Aires and in Latin America overall. Do you have to have your bearings with you, or can you just be a dumb American, come down here, Hakuna Matata?
I think you can be a dumb American in Buenos Aires. I think you'll be fine. I think you'll be all right here. Would I be a dumb American in Brazil or Colombia? No. I mean, you lived in Brazil. You've been to Colombia. You know, like, you're always a bit on edge. Like, always. Like, in the morning at 9:30 a.m. on your way to church, you'll still be looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. 100%. I've gone over it a handful of different times. It's a scary topic. Anyone that wants to first come down here, but just, it's not war zone. Okay, you saw here we've been recording and everything is fine. One beggar came through, but there's not too big of issue with the danger if you're not stupid, right? Don't be stupid. Pause it. All right, Mr. Wandering Investor, I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you because most of your content is mainly, okay, about the numbers and this place and that place, but the people want to know a little bit about you. Now, I've met you a couple times now, and I like your vibe. A lot different than I expected from the content I saw. So tell me, right now, the country that most surprised you in the world. What comes to mind when you went there and, oh my God, this is nothing like I ever thought it would be?
So Madagascar, I would say, was very surprising because of how unique it is. It has a unique fauna, a unique flora. It's had its own evolution for thousands of years. And the country is absolutely gorgeous and very much undiscovered. And if you notice, Nick just kind of covered his bag with his hand because he saw a dodgy looking dude walking by. So I guess it's not that safe here.
Best country for clothing. I've noticed you got some good style on you. I saw you wear in one of your videos a nice Mediterranean, striped linen shirt. I'm big into style. Italy played a big impact on me. Where do you best buy the best clothing traveling?
France has a really good selection of clothes. I think France is a very good one.
Egypt is very under the radar. There's certain places in Egypt that is freaking dirt cheap linen, cotton, Egyptian cotton. Make sure you get the right stuff, not off the street. Like, there's some really good places in Egypt I was impressed with. Okay, if you had to choose one cultural lifestyle to live for the rest of your life, what culture would it be?
I really enjoyed life in South Africa. So it was very relaxed. A lot of fun, but not necessarily in the Latin way, but with a more European vibe and an African flavor. So as a European, being in South Africa was very, very comfortable, if you ignore all the crime.
Besides Spain, France, the Riviera, Italy, what Mediterranean country do you like the most? North Africa, the Balkans, which one is amazing?
So technically Montenegro is not Mediterranean because it's on the Adriatic, but I spend a lot of time in Montenegro, a little country of 600,000 people, and it's absolutely gorgeous. You've got the sea, you've got the mountains, it's tiny, it's just the level of beauty per square mile is unbelievable.
The Adriatic is really nice. Croatia, obviously. Albania, it's more rocky, not as like beachy beaches, more rock beaches, but the Adriatic is definitely underrated. Obviously, you have the tip of Greece in it and whatnot, and then the Aegean Sea mostly, but if you could only be surrounded by a certain people, culture, who would those people be? Americans, French, Africans, who?
Probably Americans.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Look, I mean, generally speaking, people in America are the level of, okay, let me rephrase this. With Americans from before, right? So with America in the 90s, if I could surround myself with Americans from the 90s, kind of that with a screenshot from, the past, that would be perfect. People are generally very honest, very friendly, and easy to do business with, and had a lot of drive.
Did you, when you grew up, get influenced a lot by American culture with the Hollywood, the sports, all that, or were you more secluded in your upbringing?
I grew up in Canada, so yeah, very much exposed to American culture.
Okay, best wine. What country is the best wine?
I mean, I played baseball, so.
You played baseball?
Yeah.
Wow, what, pitcher?
No, first base.
Okay, yeah, tall, lengthy, yeah.
So, best wine? Look, there's a lot of good wine in a lot of places. I'll put it this way, a place that few people discuss for great wine, because it's easy to say France, Argentina, Italy, South Africa. Georgia. Georgia has some really good wine, and some of it with zero additives. So it's like really easy to digest.
Young dude, early 20s, single, making $2,000-$3,000 a month online. Where do you think they should go in the world right now?
If I was that young dude and I wanted to just make money online, I would, and I wanted to live on $2,000-$3,000 a month, and I'm single, I would just ask myself, what sort of women am I into? If I was into Asian women, I would go to the Philippines. If I was into white women, I would go into the Balkans, certain countries in the Balkans. If I was into Latin women, I would probably go to a Colombia or even a Paraguay.
Okay. Today, you had to pick a country to live in the rest of your life. Where do you pick?
I don't know. That's just too complicated a question. I don't know. It's too complicated.
Your ideal setup is what then, with multiple bases? Where exactly?
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no way. The world changes too fast to have a plan that you can't have a life anymore where you say, oh, I'm going to be here until the rest of my life, and then this is the most optimal thing. You can, but then it won't be the most optimal thing. I like to optimize things in terms of where I live. So at this stage, I don't know. Look, I like my current setup of being between Latin America and the Balkans. Personally, that's my current setup for now, and I'm very satisfied with it. Will it always remain this way? I don't know. I'm starting to get involved in some deals in Asia, some stuff in Africa, so maybe I'll spend more time in those parts of the world together with my family. So I don't know. It just depends on where business goes.
All right, last question here. Yep. And expand on this, okay? For any of the young people out here living the sovereign, travel, nomadic lifestyle, how do you balance the freedom with the oxytocin, the comfort, even purpose, right? How do you get the best out of both of these worlds? Because if you're just on the road all the time and no one by you that really gives a fuck about you, the loneliness, all that, but on the flip end, I don't want to be at home, watching Netflix, making money and, living a boring suburban life. So through your travels, which you've done a lot, you've lived in Africa, a lot of different places, now that you have a family, what is the best advice for, people like me that live this sort of lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it's really to listen to yourself, right? Some people are just meant to stay at home. Other people are meant to be on the road all the time, and other people are meant to have different bases. And all too often, people are in a situation not because that's the situation that's right for them or the situation they want, but because that's the situation either that they feel is imposed on them, or because they fear changing things, or because they think that that's the cool thing to do, right? Not everyone needs to be a nomad running around the world collecting residencies and passports. Like objectively, very few people need to be doing this. So just listen to yourself, really actually listen to yourself. Take the time to listen to yourself.
Do you think internally we are a little crazy, people that live this life? Because this wasn't normal for most of history besides the nomadic tribes. We stayed in the village, and we probably never left for generations on generations. Obviously, I have it in my blood because the Europeans, they went to USA and they looked for greener pastures for freedom. But do you think people in this lifestyles are a little off?
I mean, I know you're off.
That's an amazing.
I mean, look, I don't know about off, but a little crazy, sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, have you met someone that's on the road all the time who isn't a little crazy? Have you met?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really? That isn't a bit crazy?
I said, yeah. I have met those people.
That are not crazy?
Not crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, people I hang around with sometimes are.
But normal people would define you as crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
If you go back home, you're crazy. So to some extent, when you start traveling all over the world, especially in the emerging world, you do become a little bit crazy by conventional standards.
Amazing. I Dwander Investor. Great time again seeing you. Do you have anything planned? Do you want to pitch quick that is coming up? Paraguay. You have a meetup. That's going to be next week. I don't know if I'll get it out in time, but your newsletter we'll put up here. And it was a pleasure. Any final words?
Just salud.
Salud, my friend. All right. And everyone else, live bold.